Hi there. We're going to be talking today about supporting executive functioning, specifically time management, some planning and organization around time management, and going to talk about three different tools that a person can use. Been doing a little bit of comparing between them, but mostly in order to really illustrate what each tool can do. Most importantly, I'm going to talk about how these tools can be used together to be even more effective in supporting a person's challenges around time management. All right. So the first tool that I'm going to talk about is a very traditional tool. And I encourage many clients that I work with to use it, and it's a calendar. Now, some people find that the calendar on their phone, or they download one. There's who knows how many different apps the person can use. They find that to be very effective, and they find it effective for so many different reasons. There are people can sync up their calendar. Maybe with their partner, they can have a family calendar all in one electronic device. There are devices where there can be like an electronic calendar at home that once you add something from your phone, then it shows up there. And so it's going to have a hybrid model where I can see it on my phone, but also we can kind of look around at home and see it. There's a lot of different approaches to this. Reminders, you can color code on a basic Google calendar. You can color code that. A student can have each class a different color and they can make um, all their major assignments in red. I did that all the way through graduate school. But I find that many students today, technology is their go to. And so a novel approach is to use a traditional paper calendar. Maybe it's a day planner. They breaks it down by hour, sometimes about 15 minutes. There's a lot of different approaches. And I think it can be really, really useful. Another approach with a calendar that I think can be helpful is take like a desk calendar, a pretty big one, but put it on the wall and then color code it on there. Maybe just put the major assignments that are due, papers and tests. Maybe I'm thinking about a college student or a high school student. So there's a visual that you can get in person that you just can't quite get the same thing on your phone or on another electronic device. Another advantage, by the way, some of the electronic calendars is that a person can be at their desk or on their computer and they can put things on there and it can sync to their phone. So they kind of have it in both places. So because there's so many different approaches and uses for calendars, different types of calendars, they can be incredibly accessible. That a person can who has a hard time writing, maybe that their hand, uh, even if due to an injury, a chronic illness, it can still be accessible. You can do um, voice to text and speak it onto there. Um, there's a lot of different ways that this can go about, and so it's incredibly accessible. The the big challenge that I see with a calendar, like anything I'm going to talk about today, is the student has to be willing to use it, has to be willing to engage with it, try it out, try multiple different approaches because there's so many options. Trying different approaches to find what works best. For a lot of students that I work with, I have to encourage them to try it in a new way that they've never tried before, which is why we end up on a paper calendar, paper day planner, things like that, because they never have done that. They've only ever used electronic versions. And that's gotten, their phone is always at hand. They overlook that in a way that they may not overlook a calendar on the wall, something like that. Um, because the electronic versions can go in different places, they can use in an environment, but also a paper calendar can, right? A day planner that goes in a person's purse or backpack can go into almost any environment. There's different formats. And so, based on a person's accessibility needs, support needs, they can use the format that works best for them or makes the most sense for them. Um, is it easy to learn? It can be. We can start by a little bit of coaching of, hey, you've got these assignments in school, or you have these classes, put it on your calendar, and just start there. And then kind of you can build out. We can get really detailed, color coding on a paper, on a day planner. You can use ink for things that are set in stone and then pencil in to fill in more time of things that you wanted to do. So there's a lot of approaches that the biggest, most important thing is a person's willingness to try new things, to try different approaches to find what works best for them. So another tool that can be very, very helpful. So tool number two here is going to be visual reminders. There's gonna be sticky notes left around different places. Sometimes it's a to-do list that you just know you go back to it. Uh, a lot of calendars have little blanks off to the side. You can add things in. But I really like note cards. I've got this here. It's a little binder. One side is lined, the back side is blank. Flip it over. So let's say a person knows, hey, I know that I need to study a college student. Let's say that they've got 5 classes. So they can kind of update this so that if it's flipped over, they can only have 5 cards in there at the time, one for each class, and say, okay, I'm going to study my calculus class today or right now. And they've looked at only 5 blanks, only seeing 5 different things. So it's not as overwhelming. They can flip it over and they can say, okay, here's my assignments that I've got to work on right now. And for calculus or math class, it may not be a whole lot, but maybe in an English class, there's some reading assignments and maybe a shorter essay, maybe there's a bigger assignment. They can kind of be listed out in a priority, but it's a visual reminder that can be used in the moment, right? That it can streamline things. Sitting down to do all my schoolwork, going to get stuff out. And instead of being flooded or overwhelmed by the number of things that they are seeing, they can go right here. I'm going to pull this out. I've got 5 things listed. Okay, I'm going to go with this one, flip it over and streamline it. But it's more almost like a decision tree. And that can really streamline things for many, many learners, many students, and to help the time be much more effective and be managed more effectively. The final tool that I want to discuss is body doubling. This is, it's very common actually without using that language. So many college students, high school students will get together with a friend. Maybe they go to a coffee shop to do some schoolwork, to study. And we don't call it body doubling in that instance. But in the neurodivergent community, ADHD community, autistic community, it is common amongst adults, especially, in order to accomplish a lot of different tasks. And while a lot of people can be very effective, let's say at a coffee shop, if you deal with maybe you have maybe you're ADHD or maybe you have some other sensory challenges, you go to a coffee shop, there's smells, there's noise, a lot of movement. It can be very distracting. And so it's not as effective to sit with somebody there. But maybe you have a space set up for yourself at home in your apartment that is very sensory friendly, and it's a good space for you to learn or for you to focus. So we can use technology, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, Zoom, a lot of different approaches for this so that there's somebody there with you. Now you may be muted to have them on the screen. You're both doing your own work, but you've got a partner there who may look up and notice you're just staring off. You're not working. They may, hey, you there? What's going on? They may check in, help accountability. This can be incredibly accessible. There are some basic kind of technology needs here, but it can be very accessible because you can have a body doubling partner who's not even a classmate. They can be further away. People who maybe went to high school together and they found this worked well, and then they go to college states apart. They can still do this. And it can be a great way to support each other. There are people who, this is sort of the cottage industry of people who will provide body doubling supports for neurodivergent folks in order to show up for them and help them to get tasks completed. May notice, hey, you're off task. What you got going on over there? A lot of professionals do this. This is why people oftentimes work in co-working spaces instead of just working remotely from home, because they find that community can be really, really supportive, really helpful for them. Okay, so how do these tools work together? Well, let's say body doubling is gonna be an approach you're gonna take. Well, you got to coordinate with somebody, so you got to plan it out. You got to get out your calendar. They got to get out their calendar. Let's plan this time. Hey, I got 2 hours on Tuesday afternoon. Cool, perfect. Me too. Let's block from 2 to 4. Okay, so we're syncing this up. We're planning ahead. We have accountability. You can't just keep playing video games because you're showing up to meet somebody there. Now, the big drawback, and again, about doubling is that if you start talking, chatting, being social, then it can be disruptive and distracting. But if somebody else, both of you want to do well and want to get work done, that, hey, remember, like this in our social time, we need to work right now. Or, hey, you know what? The first 15 minutes, let's catch up. We'll chat a little bit and then we'll work. Maybe we have planned out breaks, But this goes right back to time management. We're scheduling this. We're checking that, we're kind of sketching out in our calendar. We get there for that body doubling session. We can pull out our notebook. All right, what do I need to work on today? Maybe on our calendar, as we're pulling it up, we notice, wait, I've got this test tomorrow that's got to be my focus. And I don't need to pull out my little reminder sheets here. But maybe we do. I got a couple hours. What should I work on first? You know what? All right, I got my visuals, got my 5 classes in front of me. I'm going to work on this one first. This should be more manageable. It's not as overwhelming, or maybe it's more overwhelming. I need to work on this first before my cognitive load gets to be too much, and before I start to shut down from my brain, just kind of having the gears grind down, right? So all these things, you may not list every little assignment on your calendar, but you can put them in here, and you can, hey, I got all these done, and take it out, put it in, put a new one in. This may get replaced each week. An updated, here's my week's assignments for that class, because the syllabus can be incredibly overwhelming. If you look at all the assignments, in today's world of Canvas and other online programs that show you all the assignments in one place, that may be too much. So you can break it down, and you can switch out your visual reminders. You may look at your wall where you see your calendar up there, and you've got all this red coming up next week, tests and papers that are due. And many people find that so overwhelming, they're not able to be productive because they can't figure out what to start on. But here I can decision tree, right? I can go right to it. I'm going to start on this one. Okay, what am I going to start here? I'll flip it over, and we can streamline that. So we can translate information. Now, the drawbacks, all this, it does take some work. It does take work to get organized. We do have to put things on the calendar. We may have to write things in here. So we may schedule, hey, every Sunday afternoon, 20 minutes to update my notebook here. Maybe I have to transcribe a few things. We have to do it. It takes time, it takes effort, but it can be very effective. These are all accessible because there are electronic versions of stuff like this, right? We can put it in a notes app on a phone. We can do talk to text if you have that need. Okay. These are all very, very accessible in different ways. Maybe sometimes body doubling is done in person. Instead of going to a coffee shop, you gather up somebody's house where there's a good sensory environment to meet your own needs. But all these tools have a long history of people using them very effectively. Some of these are very commonly known amongst the neurodivergent community. The body doubling, for instance, is very common in the neurodivergent community, but may not be as well known in other settings, or maybe that language isn't so obvious to use. But it can be very effective and can be very helpful, and it can help students and learners to avoid feeling so isolated as well.